Hey, gang. First off, thanks to everyone who's joined the Chris DeMakes A Podcast Facebook group. For those of you who haven't, it's a private group, and you can join really simple. All you have to do is submit who you'd like to see as a guest on Chris DeMakes A Podcast. And so far, it's been an overwhelming response of requests for Roger Lima, of course, the bassist for Less Than Jake, which is hilarious because, when we're off tour, we'd rather not speak to each other. No, that's not true. But I was super excited that Roger agreed to be on the show, and we've given the listeners their wish. Roger is the first guest who left it up to me to pick the song, and I went with The Science of Selling Yourself Short. One of Roger's greatest songs I feel he's ever brought to the table for Less Than Jake. We go in depth on the writing process of it. We talk about the recording with producer Rob Cavallo, our disastrous debut live performance of the song at the 2003 K-Rock Weenie Roast, and what the original lyrics to the song were. So to hear all this and listen to us hurl insults at each other for 45 minutes, please stay tuned.
Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes A Podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes A Podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes A Podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes A Podcast.
I started this damn podcast and, I put out there on the Facebook page, I said, who do you guys want to see as a guest? And overwhelmingly, the guy in my damn band, your name keeps coming up. So I had to have you on the show. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, people don't realize that we interact plenty outside of extra conversations for podcasts.
This is like the last, you don't understand. Like, I dreaded this text. I did not want to have to make this phone call. I'm like, oh God, but he's agreed to do it. He's here, folks.
Well, I'm a fan of songs, and I'm like the same. Me and you are the same in that way. We always wanted to be, what's the story behind the song, and like, how the hell did he come up with that lyric or that idea? And like, I think that it's cool that you're doing this, man, because I'm ultimately going to learn shit about songs that I like that I didn't know. So I think it's cool.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I actually,
he paid me $20 to say that, you guys.
At least $20. No, I really was, out of all my guests, I mean this all my heart. I was really looking forward to doing this with you because I know it would just, the episode's going to write itself. With all my guests, Raj, I make notes, about them. I didn't have to make notes about you, obviously, but I did print the lyric. I did print the lyrics just to have them here. So the listeners know I asked my guests to pick a song, a defining song from their career. And I asked Roger, and Roger said, "Oh, I thought you did that." And so I said, you know what, for this particular one, I will pick it. And this is an interesting song. It's The Science of Selling Yourself Short from our Anthem record that came out in 2003. It's interesting because I have a really, really good memory. I pride myself on it. And what I do remember of this song, I really want to get Roger's take on it because this was one of the later ones that was written for the record that I remember coming to the record. Roger may have had it before, but so set this one up, Roger, if you can take us back to 0203.
Yeah, my memories are not like yours, man. Chris can remember like dates and times, and this guy was there, and you were wearing a red shirt and stuff like that. I don't really remember stuff with that kind of detail. I just kind of remember sort of like the vibe and, like what the interactions were like and sort of the feeling and like, the moments and stuff like. And with that song in particular, like it just always had its own space when we were working on all those songs. Because you got to remember, we were working on Anthem and B-side songs together.
Yeah, at the same time.
We were shuffling like nearly, whatever it is, 30, 35 songs or whatever at the time. So, but Science always sort of had its own, like feeling, had its own space. Like we gave it its own attention. It was, I think we kind of knew that it was unlike anything else that, we had done some reggae before, and we have bits of songs that have some of that reggae stuff, but it was really like kind of its own monster, even from the get-go, I feel like,
Well, yeah, and that's a great point too, because like when we were doing the demos or writing, I should say, for whatever record, we didn't even know this would have been 2002, and we were rehearsing 5, 6, 7 hours a night, like every night. We just go to the warehouse and we would just go for it. And so, we didn't really know what songs were going to make the record. We honestly wrote like 30 songs, and then of course one record became a B-sides record. But in terms of this one, I don't recall jamming it or playing it out at our practice space. This was something that, and what I do remember, and maybe this will jog a memory, Raj, I do remember, I don't think there was the chorus, the I'll sing along.
Yeah, that's totally right. So I came up with the initial thing of the song, and so here's what I remember about it, which this might trip you out though. I don't think you even know this, man. So the first incarnation of the music for this song for me was just obviously just guitar and vocals, and it had the na 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 na. It had that melody like completely set. But the lyrics that I had for that before I brought it to the band, because I didn't know that this was going to be like a What's the Jake song, because we were doing punk rock stuff. This was like this chill little California thing, right, for me in my brain. And the lyrics that I had for the song, it went 700 miles, da 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 da, 700 minutes, and it was all like about this girl that I was dating in California, and how I just attributed the number 700 to getting to see her the next time and stuff like that. So, and I actually have that written in my first lyric book, like the lyrics to that song, and it was just the song to me was it was called 700.
Well, that's very interesting, because I didn't know that. Honestly, what I did think, though, because you've had a number of songs, you still play this one riff that's never turned into a song. It's almost like God, for lack of a better word, like a flamenco. You always play it on acoustic guitar. But anyways, that's something the thing I'm talking about is something you wrote back like when you were a kid, like in high school. And for some reason, I thought maybe Science was one of those you wrote way back when and then brought it to the band. But again, I remember I never heard that story. That's fascinating about the 700. I know that's the first time.
Yeah.
But the song itself, I do remember the verse and the melodies you had, da 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 da, what you were just singing. That was all the same. But then at some point,
I want to say that was Cavallo, Rob Cavallo influenced, and I think I kind of remember JR being the one to be like, well, if there's gonna be a chorusy part, it should go to this note, or whatever. I kind of think that happened when we were pre-producing the song in California. I don't think that was part of the song before we actually got out there and got in the practice space with Rob Cavallo back then.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of my recollection of it.
Because I kind of I gave it a listen, because it's been a few years, and there's so many little things in there, like that sort of tremolo guitar thing that happens in the chorus, that was all Cavallo, that idea. Sing along, yeah, with every emergency, just sing along. And I feel like that came when the sort of chorus idea was introduced,
Right. Well, that was another, and I want to touch on Rob's influence on the song. We'll get there in a moment. Because there's definitely stuff he brought to the table. So going back, when we're doing the record, at what point did you realize, because to me, it was really when I first heard the faders go up in the studio, when the horns were on there, the backing vocals, and I had my oh shit moment, wow, this is something special. This is a different animal. When did you know that?
I don't really know, man. I mean, I think as we were building the track and the horn parts sort of solidified, and then the percussion kind of came in there and gave that sort of background vibe, and the organ player came in there and laid down his little things, and by the time it was all stacking up, it just, I don't know, it just kind of felt like we had built a mountain out of a pretty simple idea to me, it wasn't it was just some chords and a melody, and it got yeah. it got orchestrated like a mofo, as far as a lot of our other songs. So some of those songs, are pretty straight up, we're just kind of rocking it out the way we sort of do at practice. But that one has, I don't know, I guess they all have extra layers and stuff, but Science just has its own its own like spirit, like it has a lot of those layers that contribute to like the overall.
Yeah, and that's such a great point, because it really, if you just break it down, it's only a couple chords, and the melody is, I don't want to say it's simple, but it's not this big complex song that it turned out to be. I mean, the initial idea, you're right, it was just this little reggae riff idea.
Yeah, I really think that what happened with the chorus too, lyrically, like although we kind of like, I think when we were doing it, we were like, this has to be something that everybody can remember, like the first time they hear it kind of thing, like I'll sing along, like that whole like echoey kind of thing. And I think that sort of is another thing that made it kind of like, I want to say idiot proof, like anybody's going to be able to sing that and remember that part. And so like lyrically, I don't remember how that came along too, because that was way late in the game as well. Like that part of it.
I do remember, for our listeners that don't know, we recorded this record Malibu at Morning View, the name of that Incubus record where they recorded. And this was it was the most rock star thing we could have done. Warner Brothers put us up in this 15,000 square foot mansion. We had half the house. The owner had the other half. And I remember, to your point just now, Roger, I remember being at the dinner table one night, and Craig, our A&R person who signed us at Capitol and also signed us at Warner, he was just harping on this song about needing a chorus, and he kept just singing. He wanted it to say, I'll sing along every time. He never wanted it to say, I'm so far gone. He's like, no, it's got to be the same thing. It's a chorus, and to his point, I mean, yeah, a lot of times you want to hit people over the head with the chorus, and I wouldn't change anything with it now, but I do remember that conversation. That was a big deal of like, this chorus has to be right.
Yeah, and I think that's the compromise that we kind of always fell into with stuff like that, because I'm not going to say they ever like put their foot down, but a lot of times Craig wanted stuff dumbed down. He wanted some stuff simpler, and we kind of always sort of were like, well, we'll kind of halfway do that, but this other line has to be something descriptive and something original.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about that. I think that's why our fans do like us. We stand out in that way. It's not, cookie cutter, all of it, and we've had our moments where it's like, no, this has to be simple and simple, stupid, or whatever. But so going into I just want to say real quick, I remember when we were out in doing the record, and again, that playback was happening. And during that time, it was around Thanksgiving, my brother had flown out, and my brother's a big champion of the band. He loves us and loves all the music. And I just remember him hearing this. He heard like all the playback of pretty much all the tunes. They were pretty much done by that point. We were only out there for maybe another week or two after he was there into December. And he was just, the look on his face, I'll never forget it. He just like, he asked Doug, the engineer, he said, can I hear that again? And, he didn't ask any other song, just that one. Can I hear it again? He's like, dude, that song's incredible, and it leads me to, and it's such a fascinating topic of what makes a hit. And that's why I picked this song, Raj. And this isn't, I'm not saying this from a standpoint of, we got robbed, we should have had a hit. But, this is one of those songs in our career. I was like, okay, right moment and right time, right label, right amount of money. This had hit single written all over it.
Yeah, I mean, but I think to some degree or another, it sort of was like, I mean, it
Sure.
rocked the waves as much as we could have at the time. Like, I mean, I don't really know like what, if it was going to turn us into like a arena rock size band or something. I think we were always going to be like what we were or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the video that came out for it, they spent some money on that video. They tried to make it happen there. And I feel like we got like the appropriate quote unquote push without like being too ridiculous,
Sure. And my second point to this is that it is a hit amongst our fans. When I was saying hit, I was talking commercial level, being on the time at MTV or whatever was happening at the time. And it didn't, get that, huge status, but amongst our fans. And I mean, it's a song that we've played at every show since the record was released. I can't remember a time where we didn't play this song live. It's just, we kind of have to play it.
I remember a time that I wish we hadn't played it live. that I thought of the other day.
I think I know that one.
Oh, dude, that was a rough one, man. That was one of the first times. Oh, yeah.
Can I set this one up?
Yeah, dude. That was. I was like, oh no, we ruined the song. Maybe that's why it wasn't a huge hit.
So my friend Roger, he has, and we will talk about this at the end when I let him plug all his projects. But Roger's been playing in Rehasher, a band he started back in the early 2000s. And Rehasher plays this show. I want to say it was in Jacksonville, maybe. And the very next morning, we're all out in LA. We flew out there, and the next morning, Roger's up at the crack of dawn, like 5 a.m., and he flies out to LA. We're playing K-Rock, which, you've heard me talk about K-Rock on this show. K-Rock's one of the biggest stations ever in Southern California and Los Angeles, and we're playing their radio show. Now, when you got invited to play a radio show, that meant the radio station was playing your hit. All kinds of industry people were going to be there, the label people. It's kind of like, have your shit together. And we had never played this frickin' song as a band at that point. We rehearsed not live.
We kind of knew it. There's a couple factors that was going on there. Like, for one, the song is in F. And it's a little bit, the scale of it is a little bit higher than the majority of our songs. It's just a little bit harder to sing. It's a little bit, has a couple of those extra high notes in there. And then it was like 11:30 in the morning or something. They had us playing like a ridiculous early, like we got shafted on the time slot. It was like rainy and cold. It was like there was like not that many people even there, and I don't know. That might have been the first time that we played it live, and I just remember being like, man, I did not sing that very well. Like I just remember being like that song is way better than what we just did on that stage. You know what I mean? Well,
and two to my initial point is, you were up late the night before. You were screaming throughout, Rehasher's punk rock. It's just nonstop vocals, screaming, and you get on this flight, you come to LA, straight to the airport, to the show, put on your show shoes, you're on the stage, and everything you said is correct. The weather to the time, we got the parking lot slot. We got shafted there. It couldn't have got worse. And I remember looking out. Now this was, I want to say it was at Irvine Meadows that we did that. It was just this huge, for lack of a better word, this open air amphitheater. It looked like a stadium. It was humongous. And there was, could probably hold 30,000 people. And when we went on, there might have been 2,000 people in the whole place. They're just pockets. And I remember
it was empty. Yeah. It was totally empty. Yeah.
I remember looking out after the song ended, and right in the middle of the crowd, sitting down, is Jeremy Popoff, the guitar player from Lit. He had the big long beard in the rubber band at the time, and I look out, and they had of course, that song "My Own Worst Enemy," which is a lyric here, and I'm like, hey man, thanks for letting us borrow your lyric, and he just kind of waved, and I'm like, man, we're at the friggin', we're at the talent show, and we just got pantsed.
Yeah, that was, but the rest of the set, was fine. It was just that particular song not being super rehearsed on it. It's sort of like, it's like slightly up on the difficulty level on singing and stuff. So yeah, that was a thing. But but since then, like, it's like I'm really like, I feel really good about when we play that song. It feels good to get those melodies out, and like it's always fun live, man.
Yeah, I'd like to say that was probably the last song or last time that I remember, and that was in 2003, December of 2003. That was the last time that I was ever nervous about getting up and playing our songs. There was a lot of unjust pressure we put on ourselves. All the labels here, it's a big K-Rock thing. This is our chance. And in reality, we had been a band at that point for 11 years. We already made it in terms of everything we were putting this undue pressure on ourselves. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
totally, man. But like back to like the creation of the song and stuff, man. It really, I can't express how, like, when we were doing the thing out in Malibu and we were like living it, and this was like the big record that we actually like were spending a bunch of money on. We had like Green Day's producer, and we had like a personal chef cruising in, and like we were like we were living it. Like that was the peak as far as like the lavishness of the music industry or whatever. And And yeah, I don't know, but that's even amongst all of that, like it still felt like a lot of those songs, especially Sides, was just like we were still sort of making a statement. We were still kind of like doing our artistic thing, and it felt good to do that. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and we were out there for about a month, and I can't recall a day that it rained out there. I mean, it's Southern California. It was just beautiful weather, 75 degrees during the day, 55 at night. We were a quarter mile from the beach. The house was situated directly next to Cher's mansion. Okay. Sonny and Cher, Cher. And I remember going down to the beach every day, and I remember when we were doing it that it was a special time. I remember saying to myself, Chris, you enjoy this and remember it. And when I hear this track in particular, it's kind of like I can feel the summer vibe, even though we recorded in November, if that makes sense. I can feel the Southern California. The song just drips with that, and I go right back to when that moment when we recorded those times.
Yeah, man. Like I said, it captured that stuff pretty well. I mean, some of that stuff that on that record is a little bit more straight up punk rockish kind of thing or whatever, and I think fits other sort of eras of the band. But yeah, this we've done some reggae since then too, some songs in this world. But and something about it's that marriage of melody and lyrics and just the vibe captured on the recording and all that. So it's just it's a trip.
And getting into keys, I like to, and I haven't touched too much on this with people. And it's kind of
yeah. I mean, I tried to move it down to a more logical key on the guitar.
Did you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could be done in a lower key. Even the half step down like saves a lot of those top notes in the verses,
but it just doesn't feel the same.
It doesn't have the same impact like F. When something it's just kind of a little bit more piercing. I don't know. It's settled down too much. If you guys at home that play guitar, play the thing in a half step down, play it in E and sing it, and you're like, oh, now it's kind of like too chill. Like it doesn't have the intensity of where it sits. So I definitely remember being like, oh, I wish this could be down lower, so it's not going to be a bitch to sing. But
yeah, and for our listeners who are musicians that can hear this kind of stuff, you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
But we don't cheat though. It's pissing me off, these bands that are starting to cheat and play their songs like down a whole step or whatever live. Like the day that happens is when I just need to either start taking vocal lessons or quit smoking weed, whatever it's going to be, man. Like.
Well, that's a great point. I was just going to say that, it's a blessing and a curse to have the ear that you and I do, Raj. And again, to our listeners that have a great ear for music and hear these things, I've been to amphitheater concerts, my favorite bands in the past couple of years, and I'll see 20,000 people jumping off the rafters going nuts. And I'm like, and all I can think of, I'm sitting there going, oh, damn, my favorite song's down a whole step.
Yeah, and it gets to like that triumphant line in the chorus, and you're singing it like at half volume because it's not up high where it's supposed to be. It's just it's a weird thing.
You're flying half mast at that point. You're like, what's going on? Why doesn't this sound right? And a lot of those '80s cats, a lot of those guys that ran in the '80s of music that I grew up and loved, they painted themselves into a corner because they were singing notes that only dogs could hear. And now they're up there in their 60s, trying to hit these notes that it's impossible. So let's touch on a little bit of what Rob brought to the table. Rob Cavallo, of course, is his breakout record was Dookie with Green Day. He's went on to do a number of things over the years. He's been president of A&R for a number of companies. And we got a chance to meet with Rob about a year, maybe 6 months before this record. Met him in LA and thought he was a chill guy. And just his track record alone, we wanted to work with him. What do you remember about Rob bringing to the table with this song?
Well, he just has like a sort of a quirky energy, and he's sort of spontaneous in a way, and he's very free, like as a musician. Like his palette is like really widespread, man. Like when hanging out with that guy, and he would pick up a guitar and he would just be like, okay, like he understands like all the like 60s chord structure stuff, and like it was just, he just kind of got sort of a charm of a track like that, where it's just sort of it's simple at its root form. And for sure, like his contributions were some of the guitar sort of little stuff that's stuck in there that that like there's like a little guitar interlude that'll tie these two sections together, or like the fact that like a real hard tremolo on the chorus to kind of give it its own flavor that there's no other song like that on the record. And a lot of the little sort of details that you hear on there. And I have to shout out to the percussion again, man. Like the percussion too, like if you mute that track, that thing does not feel the same,
Did Louis Conti, is he the one who played on that? Was that Louis?
I believe so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think I have video of that buried somewhere.
Well, I was going to say, and then there's the pre-chorus. So I sit and wait and wonder, does anyone else feel like me? Someone so tired of their routines and disappearing self-esteem. That part, you doubled your bass on a baritone guitar, which is really cool.
Yeah, that like kind of reggae trick.
That part.
Yeah, and that's the guitar part that everyone's like, "Oh, Chris, you're such a rad guitar player, man." I'm like, "Wait a minute, I played that."
No, but that part again, it went from this verse and then it just kept building, and then there was the layers of the keyboards, of course, the percussion and something about that track, the key that it's in, the fact that there's no distortion guitars. I mean, the horns sound amazing on Science. They sound
absolutely
great.
Yeah, they're real. I mean, they're real clear there. And I was going to say too, another thing on there that was a slightly new ground in a way is when it went to that bridge and the bridge section, and then you're singing that section. We did stuff like that all the time, not that, but while you're singing, there's this like solo-y, like really like grown up sounding sax solo thing going on in the background.
Slip away, lost my faith in another day. Self-deprecation seems okay.
Right.
And that's not something that we had really done before. Because that was, that was the first time that we had JR that could kind of play that way and sort of free flow and kind of like come up with like stuff that's suiting like on the spot like that. And like you can kind of feel that that's not like a super rehearsed section of the song. It's a little bit, because that sax is just kind of fooling around a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, and I mean he's plays a tenor sax, and prior to that, the record before, our sax player played the baritone, which is a really low, growly type instrument. So, yeah, that's a great point, which I wanted to bring up. This was JR's first record with us, and he brought a lot to the table. That little sax part, which I didn't even think of till you brought it up. That's something that we hadn't done, which gives this song its own flavor. But also, he sang the high harmonies and the choruses on this song.
Yeah, totally. I mean, his range on the top side, I mean, probably people don't know, and I probably get credit for that. People are like, "Oh, it's Roger singing all that high shit," but probably 8 times out of 10, that's JR singing all the super high stuff on anything since Anthem.
Yeah, and for a big dude, he hits these notes. I'm looking over, I'm going, "How are you singing that high?" To this day, it amazes me. And that I don't want to say change the sound, but yeah, it did. It definitely was a new flavor for us. The harmonies in that chorus is just so. It's so catchy.
It brought us one step closer to like that, like Eagles thing that, we're like, oh, harmonies are the shit. Like singing together is great. We love that. But you and I could only kind of get away with so much, we can only cover so many bases. But like now with the 3 of us singing, it's like, more often than not, like we're just being able to hit that like Beach Boys thing or whatever, like that 3-part harmony. It's awesome.
Yeah. And, being in a band, and I definitely know you feel this way. We've had this conversation. I'm always searching for the next greatest song or the next song that's better than the last. You're always trying to, not for any ego or personal reasons. You just always want to write the next great song. And, there was definitely something. I keep using the word. There was something in the air. It was something magical with this one. And this one really, just the nature of the track itself is unlike anything else on the record. It just really sticks out. And, again, I'll go back to that question. I mean, it's so weird. I can remember specifically, like I remember writing Break Soon in my house. Like I remember writing that song. I remember, writing A-Bomb House and where we were in the warehouse working on it. But this one just kind of, like I said, came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Okay, so in the history of when we would go make records, like way back from the beginning, like there was always like these sort of periphery songs. Like the one that comes to mind is like Throw the Brick.
Throw the brick, yeah, one more time. Thinking of my bombs that I left behind. Throw the brick one more time. Throw the brick, yeah, one more time.
Where like we know we're going to record it. We're not going to overthink it. It is what it is. Right. And like, it like we've always sort of had these sort of like songs that we're not really overthinking, that are just kind of like, maybe it's sort of half done even, but we're going to record it because it's like, or something like when we were doing anthem and B-sides, like the national anthem song, like that was written like in the last possible hours that we could have added a song to the collection. You know what I mean? It's something like that. And I kind of remember that Science was sort of like that on the like chart of all the songs. It was like, oh, and then we'll do that little reggae thing. It wasn't like a focus song. It wasn't like, oh, welcome to the New South. We're going to make this whole thing and build it all up, or even like, some of the
Ghosts of Me and You. That's another one.
Yeah. Like that song was, we like spent tons of time on it, working on the arrangement. How are we going to do it? Like that was a focus song. And when we first started, Science was not on that. It was not like a quote unquote A-side when it was first part of the deal.
Right.
And that's why I think we don't have that many memories of it, because it was like a Throw the Brick, or like even Dope Man was a song where like we didn't really like over prep for those songs. We just kind of knew what the story was. We knew what to expect, and we were just going to do them.
Well, that's really why one of the reasons I picked this song was there was just like, I had questions, and I found out like the 700 thing. I never knew that, like I had questions about the origins of this tune, because pretty much, I mean, barring a couple of the B-side tracks, I remember where we were when we wrote them, who wrote them, or wrote the majority of it, or came up with the idea. But this one was kind of a mystery. I mean, you even look at stuff like, I know it came late to the table, but like I remember all the stuff that like went on with Motown when you brought that song in. I remember you saying, we got to do a tempo map with this. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're like, well, the verse has to be slower than the chorus. I'm like, okay. And it's funny what I remember about each song individually, but this one, it's just, it wasn't much of an idea, but then it turned into the animal that it is, with all the production stuff. It's great.
Yeah,
and
it's crazy. Yeah, it definitely was like first conceived like on a couch at somebody's house in Long Beach, for sure.
Yeah. So, we've talked a bit about Science, and there's some other stuff, some things that I've never asked you, as a songwriter, that I just want to talk about here as we near the end of the episode. So, do you remember? I don't think I've ever asked you this. Do you remember the first?
No, I don't. No, I don't
you
remember.
Wrote? You don't.
No, I don't remember. No, I don't remember. First songs I wrote.
And what it was called, and how old you were.
Oh man, there was like, let's see, there was songs, but see, I was like just more into the music side. I wasn't like trying to hit lyrics and stuff when I was like really little. So really little, I mean like 13, 14. So I used to have like a little Casio keyboard, and I would plug it into this bass amp that from my uncle's band, and we would like play that, and my uncle would play the drums, and like that was like the first time that I was like quote unquote jamming. But that was just like making like little songs with just a keyboard and a drum set, and just doing that sort of marriage of rhythm and melody, But as far as like actually getting into like being in a band, because I did the whole orchestra thing, and I played the viola in high school, and I took piano lessons and all that kind of stuff in like my early teens or whatever. I didn't get into like being in a band until a little later. I was like 16 when I got an electric guitar, and then I had my high school band.
Disposition.
Yeah, you remember. I think I played you the demo tape like when we first hung out.
I could still see the demo tape in my head. Yeah, the black and white demo tape. Yes.
Yeah. So that was my 3-piece quote unquote punk rock band in high school, and it was kind of like a Fugazi-ish kind of thing. And that was like the first time that I was coming up with like lyrics, but I was always like the bass player. I was the guitar player. The bass player in that band like was the kind of guy that like titled songs and had ideas for what songs could be called, and like I always kind of been sort of like doing that with somebody in a weird way, you know. But
Right.
there's I'm trying to think. There's one song. I wrote some other songs when I was like around that age with some other cat down there, but man, I don't remember. Something
Yeah.
about like something about like hanging on a Saturday night, like kind of lyrics. I don't remember, man.
Well, and I'd like to kind of go off on a little tangent here and just talk about, I get asked a lot, and I know you do too, Roger, in interviews, or Roger produces bands, he has young bands, and they'll say,
Oh shit! I just remembered it. I forgot the guy's name, but it went 11 o'clock. I wanted you so bad. 11 o'clock's the best I ever had. It was something like that, like about a chick.
I want to record that on the next record, the next less than Jake Lost at Home session. Don't forget the lyric.
Oh God, no. That's one time only right there. That's it. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. It just hit me. I was like, oh, I remember that song. I must have been 15 when that song was. I'm
glad you did. But what I was going to say is, you produce a lot of bands. I know you get asked like, hey man, we want to go out and tour, and we want to, a lot of bands will use the word, we want to make it, or we want to do this and do that. And, I love telling the story, and people have asked me before, how'd you meet the guys in the band, and or how did you become successful? And I always say that, my gosh, the stars that aligned for this band to happen. I mean, I knew our drummer Vinny since high school. I went to UF. He didn't even know if he was going to transfer up there. He ended up begrudgingly transferring up there with his girlfriend at the time. He comes up there, and we started the band for the first 6 months with it. We had a different guy playing with us, and it didn't work out. And I had these roommates, these two girls that I went to high school with, that were at the dorm one night or at a party somewhere. And I come home, and Jill's sitting there. She says, "Hey, Chris," she goes, "So you're looking for someone to be in your band, right?" I says, "Well, yeah." She says, "I met this guy tonight, and he's amazing." And I go, "Okay, whatever." And it was maybe 3 or 4 nights later, I walk into the apartment again, and I walk in, and there's this guy in my living room, and she's like, "Hey, this is Roger." And I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" And I'm like, "Oh, you jam?" And you're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Cool, come check out my guitar." And you walked into my bedroom, the apartment, and I had my little combo amp there, and you grabbed the guitar and you started playing, and I had my shit moment. I was like, okay. And it was just like, but like, think about it. I mean, you had your choice. You were a smart kid. You could have went anywhere. You didn't have to go to UF. You got accepted to other colleges, and
it is what it is. It's crazy. You're just lucky you had cute roommates, is all I'm going to say.
No, but the reason I wanted to bring this up in terms of songwriting is that, and I'm not saying this to kiss your ass or anything like that, but I couldn't have done this. I mean, I think I write some great songs, but I had to find you guys. I had to find you. You were
for sure. I mean, I had seen Less Than Jake play. I saw you guys play at the Cover Dish. I remember that. I remember what the band was like before I hung out with you and stuff, and it was just like, it was a lot like a lot of other things. It just didn't stick out quite the same,
It's
and
very linear. There wasn't much to it.
It was, it was good pop punk, but it was just sort of, it just kind of, I don't know. And then at some point there, we just decided to take things to a different level. We learned all those early songs and stuff, and we did the pop punk thing, but whenever the gears started turning, that we could play some ska, and we could, that we had that energy to like make that go off. Whenever that happened, man, that's like when the fire kind of got lit, I think, because then, like, I don't know, like musically, I could really relate to that stuff. And I think that's how we ended up writing a song like Science, is because I always loved like Bob Marley or whatever, but I'm not going to sit here and like be like, oh, I'm super into like every ska band. And I'm not like a two-tone guy or anything like that, but I do love reggae, and I love the raw energy of like ska and ska punk, and like, the danceability and all that, like the release of it all. But like, I don't really know. What if we just kept playing, punk rock? What if we never got a horn section and we were just like a Face to Face style band back in the day, and then we never would have ended up on Science,
Right.
It's kind of I don't know if you remember. I remember like I clearly remember the first time that we were like playing ska and we're sitting there with guitars and I'm like yeah, you like upstroke it and you like squeeze it. I can like picture you playing like ska on a guitar for the first time.
Yeah, no, and that's I'm so glad that's such a great point that you brought up of like, what if we did get the horn section? What if we decided, no, we're just going to stay a 3-piece? I mean, we wouldn't be talking about this song. It's all those little pieces that eventually get you to where it's at. And last thing I want to leave the listeners with, I want to ask you, do you remember? Because I know when the moment was for me, but do you remember the moment where you were like, okay, we got something here. This is beyond my 5 drunk friends that want to hear the band on Saturday night and party. There's something here, and I think we could make this into a legitimate, for lack of a better word, a career. Do you remember that moment?
Well, it definitely wasn't on the first tour.
I talked about that recently. Yeah,
I think so. When we started, we were doing pretty good in Gainesville, but I felt like Gainesville was sort of easy pickings at the time. But when we started hitting Daytona fairly frequently and the shit was hitting the fan when we would play at that Lazy Susans?
It was Lazy close. It was Up and Adam that became Black Eyed Susans.
Black Eyed, yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. That venue, like for whatever reason, whatever the hell was happening over there, that was like a pretty good indicator that like if we could replicate that in other places, that like, maybe we could like, get in a van and cruise around. But honestly though, I think for me, it's when we really did have Craig on our side, our A&R guy, when we first were introduced to Capitol Records and sort of that whole like big business side of music and his sort of like guiding hand in those stages. I think that's when I was like, wow, we're going to be on the same label as like the Beatles and Pink Floyd and shit, I think that for me was like when I was like, okay, like now, like quitting school makes sense now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And as well as I do, it was never about, it's funny because people cried sell out if you signed to a label. Well, none of us were thinking about money. We just wanted to play the next big show. Like if we could sell out the Cover Dish at the time in Gainesville, which is a 550 seater, that was the dream, and we hit that pretty early on, and everything else has been gravy. So, hey, I want to thank you for taking the time. I know you really didn't want to talk to me today, but
well, I don't want to. I just don't want to talk to you on any days that end in Y, but it's all good.
If any of you have been in a band for any length of time, you can fully get what we're talking about. This is a love-hate I got going with this SOB. Okay, so yeah. I want you to let our listeners know what's going on with the world of Roger Lima, and you got 1 minute and 38 seconds. Go.
Thanks, man. Yeah. So I'm doing a lot of, since all of this at home time is going on, I'm just working on songs and doing a lot of stuff in my studio at the Moat House. And I just did a record with this band called Grab Bag. It's like a punk rock record, and it's hilarious. It's a really good, funny record. So I'm going to be posting that on my Facebooks, yada, yada. You can check it out. Yeah, just working on some rehasher songs. Had a couple singles come out this year, a couple more. Working on some songs with my other side band called Greenhorn with my friend Jen. Got 3 songs lined up for that. And then, of course, pounded away on the Lost at Home sessions with my Les and Jake dudes. And yeah, that's what I'm doing, man. I'm hanging out, trying to enjoy the alone time, flying quadcopters a shit ton, and enjoy each day as it comes by.
That is awesome. Can you let our listeners know if they'd like to get in touch with you for a production or recording of their band, how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, really, the best thing, keep everything sort of separate, is the facebook.com moathouse.studio. The Moat House is my studio, and if you want to hit me up on that Facebook page, that's usually the best spot.
Perfecto. Well, hey, man, go fly some planes, and thank you for taking the time out. I love you, man.
Love you, man. Have good luck with the rest of the shows, and thanks for listening.
Very special thanks to this week's guest, Mr. Roger Lima. Thank you, Roger, for doing the episode. I love you, man. You know that. And thanks to all of you out there. Thanks to all the listeners who have made this podcast beyond my wildest dreams in terms of success. It's been overwhelming, the response, the support, everyone who's joined the Facebook group, Chris DeMakes A Podcast. Thank you, and please keep those requests coming of who you'd like to see as a guest on the show. Special thanks to everyone who has ordered a custom song from me or has gotten together with me for a live one-on-one video consultation, which, yes, I'm doing those now. They're for song collaborations, co-writes, production questions pertaining to the music business and everything in between, as well as the custom songs I mentioned. If you'd like one written for you or that special someone in your life, a jingle or a voiceover for your business, brand, or podcast, and anything else you can think of when it comes to a one-of-a-kind custom song, hit me up. To see some of my work, check out my YouTube page at chrisdemakes.com and email me at chrisdemakes@gmail.com. I can be found on Facebook at Chris DeMakes Official, on Twitter at Less Than Chris, and Instagram at Less Than Chris D. And please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Lastly, I'd love to get your feedback and input at Chris DeMakes A Podcast Facebook group. Hit me up there, and I will talk to you. I like talking to you. You guys are great. So be on the lookout for next week's episode, which will not air on the usual Monday. It'll be on Sunday. It's a special Father's Day episode, and it's a good one. All right, guys, thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.